guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronica. Thank you so much for clicking the link to watch today's video. Without further ado, let's get started with today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I have another special guest here. This is Sarah. And you guys have been bothering me, sliding into my DMs, commenting constantly about social workers. And she is a military social worker, so she is active duty. So I will let you guys, I'm going to ask her some questions, and then that way you guys can stop harassing me about it. A lot of you are really interested in the mental health career field, so hopefully your questions get answered, and we're just going to go ahead and kick it off. So Sarah, how long have you been serving?
So I've only been in for 2 years now, so
Ooh.
yeah.
So she's junior just like me.
Yes.
And where have you been stationed, states-wise?
So I'm from Kentucky, and then I did residency in Travis Air Force Base, which is in California. That was only a year, and then I got placed out here. So this is just my second duty location.
Ooh, well, she's already had 2, which is way more than me. So, okay. So the biggest question I get a lot is, how do you become a military social worker? What degrees are required? What did you have to do for your interview? And of course, don't go into specifics because you know that information's sensitive, and only if you make it to that level will you know. But just maybe just a generalized, you know.
Yeah. So I personally, you have to have a master's degree in social work. Your bachelor's doesn't have to be in social work. Mine happens to be. From where I got my bachelor's in social work, I was able to do the accelerated master's program. A lot of schools offer that. Most of them offer that. So if you get a bachelor's in social work, you can do an accelerated master's program, and instead of it being 2 years, it's just 1 year. But you at least need to have the master's in social work, and then you have to have an entry-level license.
What does that mean?
So whenever you graduate with your MSW in social work, if you're going to go into the clinical aspect of things, because there's a clinical track, which is the therapeutic track, but then there's also like the non-clinical track, which is like case management or grant writing or other things like that. So if you're going to do the clinical track, you have to get at least your entry-level license. And every state is different with their licensure requirement, but it requires you to like take a test, and then you do therapy with people. You get supervised under somebody who's more senior than you to make sure you're implementing like your interventions correctly and things like that. And I'm from Kentucky, so I had to do that for a minimum of 2 years before I could get my LCSW, which is the independent level licensure. And that is what the military requires for you to come in. So a lot of social workers in the military, they come in with their LCSW. The majority of them do. Now they do have the military, or at least the Air Force specifically, has a residency program where they don't require you to have your LCSW. So if you have your entry level license, but those spots are usually a lot more limited. But I went through the residency program, so I didn't have my independent level licensure before I started with the military, but I do now.
So when you come in, if you don't have your entry level, they'll send you to your residency to get it?
Well, you at least have to have the entry level.
Oh, so you at least have to have it.
You at least have to have the entry level one to go to residency, because you have to have some sort of license saying that you're qualified to give therapy to people, and that you've met the minimum qualifications. But if you don't go through the residency program, then you have to have an independent level licensure, which is your LCSW.
Okay. Woo, there's a lot of acronyms.
It is a lot of acronyms.
They all know what you mean.
They know what I mean.
If you're a social worker, you know, or you're on that track, you know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest question too that I get a lot is about your interview process. So is it true that you sit in front of a board of 10 officers and interview?
I did a phone interview.
Oh.
Yeah, because, I don't know. I feel like that would be a lot for them to try to get us, because we're all, applying from all different states. And so I did a phone interview. Now, the process is long. It was a pretty long process. And
Really?
It required, like, a lot of peer evaluations, recommendations. And, it was a long process.
So from start to finish, because I know for me, you guys know my story, they messed up my scroll twice, so it took me like a year and a half from start to finish. So how long did it take you from when you applied to in this seat, I guess?
A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yes.
So, okay. So it does take a long time. So if you guys are interested in becoming either a social worker, MSc, whatever, officer, it takes a long time because there's a lot of steps that you have to go through.
Yeah, you just have to be patient.
Yeah. So did you go through a TFOT since you're 2 years in? Or were you at COT?
No, I went to COT.
Oh, man. I was going to say, yes, I have a TFOTer.
No.
But I'm still interested. How was your COT experience?
So my COT experience was a little rough. I think a lot of people are like, oh, COT wasn't that bad. To me, it was. It was not great for me. But also, I think it was just not. But I think a lot of the it was interesting because a lot of the challenges that I was expecting to face, I didn't face. And then the ones that I wasn't expecting or prepared for, I did face. So I think that's what made it difficult because I prepared for like all these worst case scenarios and I did really well. Like I prepared to struggle like with the physical stuff and I did really well with that. But then the academic stuff is usually like, I was like, oh, that's not an issue. That was what I struggled with the most. And I think it became like really discouraging.
Yeah.
And then the thought of like having to repeat COT if I didn't like make it through, I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I struggled as well with the academic and I couldn't understand because, you know, my GPA was like a 3.9 and I was like, what the heck? I can't.
Yeah.
I keep getting 2 questions wrong and they're like, nope, you got to retake it. So I definitely felt the same way as you. It was just, it was too much, I think, for me mentally. So just prepare yourselves mentally for if you're going to TFOT, I would say, or COT. Well, TFOT now, so.
Yeah, because now it's combined, so.
It's even longer.
I was in the last class before they combined it, so I barely made it through.
Okay, cool. So, other than that, how would you say, because you didn't work on the outside in a civilian forum, did you, or did you?
Did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So, comparing civilian to now, like.
It's very different.
Really?
Very, very different, yes. So I was in the civilian sector for 5 years before I entered the military.
Wow.
So, yeah, I had a little, quite a bit of experience, and I did a couple of different jobs, mainly with family and children. And it's just extremely different, the actual clinical aspect of it, which is like, when I say clinical, I mean like the therapeutic part of it. It's just night and day. There's so many different things that we have to worry about with our service members that wasn't even on my radar as a civilian clinician. I'm not worried about necessarily like, how you're functioning at your job and things like that. Whereas here I have to, because I'm assessing for different things like, are you fit? Are you suitable? And I didn't have to assess for that, In the civilian world, we just got to talk about whatever it is you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But here, it's like, we have certain things that we have to assess for with you being a service member, like I said, that I didn't even have to think about in the civilian world.
Yeah, and I bet you feel so much, at least I can only assume, I would feel a lot of pressure because it's not like in some cases you are career ending them. Yeah. And so I bet you that's really tough. How do you deal with that?
It's hard. There's still, obviously, the stigma for mental health in the military. I feel like it's gotten better. I wasn't in 4 or 5 years ago, but just 4 or 5 years ago, like, our encounters have doubled. So people are utilizing mental health more, but there is still, that fear and that stigma that's there. And it's hard ethically to make that decision, when you're like, you're taking care of somebody and, they're trying and you're trying and they're just not, they are making progress, but in regards to, like, their responsibilities with being a service member, maybe they just can't, ever get there. And then it's like you have to make that decision, like, hey, and you have to have those hard conversations. And it's very hard when, it's the right thing for both the Air Force and the military, but it's not what the service member wants.
Yeah.
That's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, so. That's really tough. And just the fact that you have to process that every day is really tough. So props to all the mental health people out there. I could never do that job just because it's really tough. I know that being at bases like this are really hard on the single airmen. So what kind of advice do you tell the airmen who are struggling? They're away from home for the first time. They're not married, or they're just going through maybe a depression or blues because they're in Montana and they have no idea what Montana is. So So what advice would you kind of give to them?
So I always encourage them, you need to find your community, even if it's really, really small, and get out and do things with them, and not isolate yourself, because we're already kind of isolated here just naturally where we're located. And so finding a community, I think, is really important for a lot of the airmen that I've seen have been successful acclimating here. It's because they found that sense of community and those people that they can, you know, bond with and experience things with, and even though it may not be the things that they necessarily want to do, finding that community and then being open-minded to trying new things, I think is what I always try to encourage them to do.
Okay.
And then just validating them, because it is hard, and, you know, normalizing that for them, I think, can be very helpful.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I know MSCs, we have all these different rotations. Do you guys as social workers have that many, or how does it work?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we do have 3 different elements in the mental health clinic. So we have mental health, and then we have family advocacy, which is like, you know, the family system, you know, and any abuse and things like that. And then we have the substance use clinic, but at the end of the day, it's all therapy. And so, you know, you may be discussing a different thing, but it's, you know, it's kind of all the same thing. So we don't really have a ton of different jobs that we do, like, you know, like other cores or other specialties do. But there's definitely different things that we can do within our clinic that can kind of provide some variety. So, yeah, I guess some so.
So what advice also do you have for people who are trying to come in and do mental health as a career field for officers? What things can they do to set themselves up right now in college to kind of make them successful and a good candidate to be picked for the Air Force?
Yeah, so making sure that your GPA is really, really good, because it is competitive. You know, especially if you want to do the residency program, there's way less spots than there are for people who already have their LCSW license. We call them direct accessions. So there's way less residency spots. So making sure that you're super competitive, making sure that you're, you know, at least being a part of your community somehow, because that's a big part of social work in general. It's just giving back to the community. So if you have some sort of volunteer, you know, hours or something that you can put on your application or resume, that can help. And then just making sure that you kind of go through the timeline of, okay, I'm gonna, once I graduate, get my license, and making sure that you kind of stay on top of that. Because the board, you know, I don't know how it works for others, but like when you come into a specialty job like social work or psychology or all those other things that require licensures, a lot of times those boards only meet once a year. So if you don't have those requirements before they meet, which I don't know when they meet, and, you know, that's probably more information that
contact your recruiter.
Yes, that would be information that your recruiter might know. But if you don't have all of that before they meet, like, you're not going to have those qualifications, and you're going to have to wait a whole nother year just to even apply. So I would say, like, making sure that you kind of stay on top of, like, graduating and then getting your license, and not, you know, not waiting a long time to do that, so that way when the requirements come out, you can meet as many as possible.
Yeah, and I know a lot of you guys also care about money, so you don't have to talk about specifics because that's public information. You can Google how much we all make. But are there any special incentives you get as a mental health officer, you know, that maybe is more advantageous to you to kind of go this route?
So I definitely do make more in the military than I do in the civilian sector. For sure. I had 3 jobs before I came into the military.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Not at once, though, right?
No, at once, yeah. I had 3 jobs before I came into the military. And so I feel very blessed to only have to work 1 now and still, like, have the lifestyle that I want. So very grateful for that. But sometimes they have, you know, and this might be something that you want to edit out, like, because I don't know. Sometimes they have sign-on bonuses, but then sometimes they don't, and so that's just always something to ask about. I think that they're trying to do more incentives now, just because mental health, you know, our manning has not been, it's been going down, so that would just be something that you would have to ask your recruiter if there's any kind of, like, sign-on bonuses or any kind of recruitment bonuses. But just in general, my pay and then the benefits that I get are just a lot better, and I feel like I'm definitely more compensated for my work in the military than I did in the civilian sector, for sure.
Oh, that's good. Do you guys get student loan repayment?
We do, yes.
Yeah. See, I'm jealous of that. MSCs for Air Force, we don't. But the Navy MSCs, I believe, do. Because I remember when I was talking to my Navy recruiter, she told me I would potentially be eligible for one. So that's really nice. So if you have gone to school and got your master's and all the licensing acronyms she named, you could probably get that paid for if you want to come into the Air Force. And so maybe let's end on what are some positive things that you really love about your job and why you would want someone to, come and join your career field, I guess.
Yeah, so it's super rewarding to be able to help people who have sacrificed so much for us and, our service and our country. And I think that it's very rewarding to be able to help them and to see the progress that they've made whenever they come into therapy and whenever they leave therapy. That's really, really rewarding. And then also just like being able to help the families, because, we have family advocacy. So being able to be in a position to help our service members and our families with whatever needs that they might have. I think that that's probably the most rewarding thing. And then also there are opportunities within mental health, and I think a lot of that comes from, from where our manning is, we're struggling a little bit with our manning. The opposite side, the flip side of that is there's always room, there's somewhere for you to be. So going to be taking over family advocacy, and I'll be able to put that on my OPR, and that's something that not a lot of my peers don't have that.
Right.
Because they're not in a position to be able to do that. There's no way in the civilian world that I'd be running a program and supervising all these civilians as somebody who's only been fully licensed for 1 year. I would not have that opportunity in the civilian world. That's something that comes way later.
Yeah.
For a lot of, my peers who are still working, non-military jobs. So I think that I have a lot more leadership opportunities here for sure. Yeah.
Good. So that's all for today's video. I do want to say Sarah is also going to another rank, so big ups to her. Just send her congrats on her next level that she's going to.
Thank you.
It's so amazing to, especially here in Montana, I can't tell you guys how hard it is to be and work in mental health when you have to take care of so many different people and then also yourself. So props to all the mental health workers out there, especially right now going through all these times. Make sure you're reaching out to your airmen or anyone you're working with to check on them. So I just want to say thank you to Sarah for joining me in today's video. Again, she's not also a social media person, so but you can find me at Ronnie Luke on Instagram or Veronica Luke on Facebook. Also, Lewis's book just launched, so you can buy Home Again on Amazon or Barnes & Noble for $15.99. So support my man, get him on the bestsellers list. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!